Hello and welcome to another video. And today I'm going to be going over the events of July 22nd. And we did see many events that were both on the front lines and diplomatic. So we're going to be covering all of that today. And starting off with this fact over here, there were reports from the Volyn region, especially here in Lutsk, that the 100th Territorial Defense Brigade actually refused to participate in combat operations. They were presumably being moved to the Donbass area, although that might not be true. But yeah, this is just one of many the Ukrainian units that is currently um, in a mode of not necessarily mutiny, but demoralized. And I'm going to be going into that right now when I talk about the situation in Kherson. But not all is bad for Ukraine and Kherson. There's some good news for them over here. So I changed the map to show that Ukraine now has control of Ohine. I just really don't like this color. It sort of makes it look like Russia has control of this area, but the polygon um over here it can't be you see this polygon, it can't be edited. So I'm gonna have to find some solution to that, just to show that Ukraine actually does control this area. So basically what happened was we talked before about how Russia took control of Ivanithka, and there were also reports about Tomniki being captured, and now I'm starting to believe that it actually is under Ukrainian control. So I'll also have to change that after this video is over. So what they're saying is they took these two towns, right, pretty recently, and there was very heavy fighting for this, which is why it took weeks to just take over these few settlements, these very minor, insignificant settlements. But then the main prize basically is this town over here, Visokpilia, and what the Ukrainian sources are saying is that there are 2,000. You heard it, yeah, 2,000 Russian troops in this town. And what they're saying is that basically there's an attempt at a pincer operation that would sort of cut off the retreat of the Russians, and then they'd be encircled in Visokpilia, and it would be a major defeat for the Russians if they got surrounded and taken out here. So I don't actually believe this because Russia, they probably don't have 2,000 troops just scattered uh, in this random town in this front itself. Like, this is one of the fronts that Russia has the least amount of men in. There's no reason that they would be putting 2,000 troops in Visokpilia alone. I just don't. I just can't get myself to believe that. It is possible that there are some Russian troops here that will just like leave once they see the writing on the wall, and then you'll see something like this as the front line. But there's certainly not 200. And this does not mean that there's going to be some grand counteroffensive. We've been talking about that for months now. The only thing that we are seeing is that some pro-Russian sources are reporting that there were like these Ukrainian attempts at massive shelling today. And yeah, that is true. Look at the fire map. It's absolutely crazy, the amount of fires in the Kherson region, especially along the front line and within all of Kherson itself, which is under Russian control. Look, all of this is under Russian control, and yeah, it's old fires. Some of them are probably not from Ukraine. Some of them are old fires. Yada 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 yada. But you see, for the most part, all of these fires are coming from Ukrainian shelling around here. So yeah, they do have the capability to shell. They can do that, but doesn't mean they're going to now probe into this offensive operation. And I'm pretty sure this is the town that I was just talking about. I just want to confirm that. Yeah, it is. So we do know that there's at least one fire in this town. So that probably shows that. the reports are correct that the towns to its west and east are under Ukrainian control. But that's not all I want to say about Kherson. There's a lot to go over in this region, so I'm just gonna get right into it. So first of all, in Odessa, there were reports that there were two HIMARS that were stationed there, and then on the other side of things about Odessa, the Russians they reported that they have finished training this so-called Odessa Brigade, and that this Odessa Brigade, basically the point of it is to reach Mykolaiv and then Odessa, of course. And I'm just saying that this brigade is at full combat readiness and that they want to launch these offensive operations towards these two cities in the future. If the future, that could be a while. So don't read too much into it. Now, that's really it for Kherson besides the casualty count. So I'm going to say the Russian Ministry of Defense, what they're saying is that over the past 2 days, the Ukrainians have suffered 100 personnel that are casualties, killed and wounded. 2 UAVs destroyed, 2 pickup trucks destroyed, 2 T-72 tanks destroyed, 6 armored vehicles destroyed, and then 3 anti-tank missiles destroyed, and then 4 Hurricane rockets destroyed. So that's it for Kherson. Now, there's one more thing, not in Kherson itself, but around here, around Kryvyi. I want to see if I can find the exact location on the map. If not, then it's fine. But basically, the big controversy here is that Ukraine is alleging that Russia struck this school in Apostolove over here. This is the town. And I'm pretty sure this is the school they're talking about. I'm pretty sure this is the location. I don't even know if that's a school, but I just know that the name of the school is like school number 1 or something like that. So what they were saying is that they just shelled this random school. But what's the rationale behind just shelling a school that I don't know, so far away from the front lines? There's just no reason to do so, unless there was some, I don't know, military target over there. So what they're saying is the Russians is that the school itself was a base for the 60th Infantry Battalion, and that's a reserve force that's currently operating in the Kryvyi area, basically in this northern sector where we saw the advances of Ukraine today. So yeah, they struck the school, and I'm inclined to believe Russia in this instance, just because it just makes the most sense. So yeah, that's basically it for Kherson. And now we're gonna go to Zaporizhia and Donetsk. So in Zaporizhia, the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade is being restaffed after their withdrawal from the front lines. And right now they're being trained in Dnipro and in southern Zaporizhia. And yeah, we'll see this brigade being sent back into the front lines soon. Another thing is that there were reports that javelins and Stinger main paths would be delivered to the front line in Zaporizhia, and that 155 millimeter IH-70 towed howitzers and RQ-20 Puma UAVs. And these UAVs, by the way, they have infrared laser targeting, which is pretty cool. So these howitzers and these UAVs, they were going to be deployed to Novodarivka, which I don't know where the location is off the top of my head, but I do know that the other town where they will be deployed is Orikiv, which is right over here. Oh, and look, Novoandrivka. Maybe that's because here's the thing. The Russians, because I got this from the Russian sources, they say Novodarivka, but I don't know, maybe they're referring to Novoandrivka or Novodanilivka, but it doesn't really matter. Let's go to Donetsk now. So I'm going to start off with this report from the Slavyansk sector of the fighting. And what was said here is that in Krasnopelia, which is the town over here, basically the 66th Brigade, they're engineers. They're starting to mine the residential areas themselves in anticipation for a future battle over there, which makes sense because we have seen the advances that the Russian army has made to the south of Krasnopelia, so it is basically flanked by now. I don't know how long they'll hold up in here. Yeah, but they've certainly made a very good um, effort in holding this line around here. They even pushed the Russians out of Dolina. And in the Slavyansk front, besides that, the 95th Divisional Infantry Battalion, they have actually set up fake MLRS in the area right next to Bohorodichin. So I would say around here. I still don't even know if Russia has full control of this area. I'm inclined to believe they do, just based off of the fires in the area, which of course is not loading, but you can see that there are no longer any fires in the area where Bohorodichin is located, and maybe that's just means that the front line is quiet. But I just believe that since Russia was already in control of most of the town, and the Russian sources say they have control of the town, I'm just going to believe that they do control the town. And then in this area of Tetyanivka, Prishiv, Sidorov, I really do think that Russia may have left this area already. And if that's the case, then I'm just going to change all of this into Ukrainian hands, because there were videos that of Ukraine actually in the Svyatogorsk Lavra monastery, and that was released pretty recently, a few days ago. And the way you can tell it's them is because they do have the Ukrainian emblem. So I am inclined to believe that this monastery is actually still under Ukrainian control. It is true that there was drone video of Russia in there, but it doesn't really matter because Russia can take drone videos, doesn't mean they actually control the area. So yeah, maybe Russia was never in there. And if that is true, then I totally need to reshuffle this area. And I do apologize for getting that wrong, because I know a lot of people have already corrected that. I was sort of on the fence about changing it now, but yeah, I'm going to correct it based off of the fact that there really isn't any hard evidence that Russia was even in these places in the first place, besides combing operations and these recon stuff. But the last thing about Slavyansk is that in Slavyansk, just to the north of it, around here, south of the forest, of course, there were reports that the 114th Infantry Battalion is being sent to that area, and that Slavyansk continues to be heavily fortified and supplied, especially by these NGOs like Save Our Allies. And what they're doing is you have these convoys filled with all this ammo and armored vehicles and guns, stuff like that, and then you have these NGOs that are assisting with that effort, sort of as a way to refrain Russia from striking these convoys. It is a pretty sleazy tactic, and I don't know if that's true. It's just coming from a Russian source, so of course, take it um, a grain of salt, of course. We're also seeing rumors about HIMAR deployment to this area of the front line around Balaklia, um, basically this area, and it does come as Russia started to target these towns on the periphery of the Donetsk River a bit more. And I don't know when Russia's going to take this area, because this entire area is just that we're looking at in Kharkiv. It's filled with these insanely large forests that make any advances very difficult, and Ukraine has taken advantage of this. But we might see Russia in the future, at least, crossing the Bereka River over here, taking this forest, and then going to Petrivske. And I would be I would bet on that. I think that will eventually happen, but of course not in the near future. But I think Russia's preparing for something like that to happen, because look, in the grand scheme of things, you need to take Kharkiv in order for this operation to be fully successful. If you want this special military operation, as the Russians call it, to be successful, then they do need to at least take Kharkiv, because that's right on their border, and Kharkiv has been used to shell Russia. So it would not be a good look to just let it be without any sort of further advances, because now Russia only controls about a third of Kharkiv, and we're not really seeing any changes to the Kharkiv front itself. Now we're going to get to Donbass, the heart of the fighting now. And we're going to start off with the fact that the 72nd Brigade, which earlier in the day it was reported that they had been withdrawn from the fighting in Soledar, now they're being restaffed, because what happened was they basically become demoralized, afraid of the fighting, sort of a mutiny of some sorts, and basically what happened was they were withdrawn, and now they're in a training center south of Drskivka, and they're being sent back to the front lines soon, and they'll be replenished and trained again. And that's just one brigade. You have many other brigades that I've talked about that are being rotated out in and out. In addition, the Ukrainian forces, they struck the Lysychansk oil refinery over here. This one. And that's a big threat to the energy supplies of the residents in Lysychansk that still remain there. Also, in this area, we have reports of, in Seversk specifically, first of all, in Serebryanka, fighting over there. I need to change the map to show that, but yeah, you see that fires, there are already fires present in Platonivka, Dronivka. I could even show it over here. I don't know how much that proves, because Serebryanka is here. Maybe that just means that Russia is already stationed in Serebryanka or on the outskirts of Serebryanka, and then they're just shelling towards this area. And then that's basically in terms of fires in the area. You have some like over here, but yeah, most of the front line doesn't have any fires. The only interesting thing about Seversk now is that the 80th Separate Detached Infantry Battalion, they have reported that two of their companies have actually lost half of their men in the recent fighting due to hard Russian shelling. And because of all of these major losses, because Ukraine, in holding these front lines, they have basically done this at the expense of many of their men. Maybe it was a good idea, maybe not, but yeah, it's undeniable that they've lost many men in this effort. And now, basically, they're planning this very quick withdrawal from the area to basically anywhere outside of Seversk, because they think that Russia, they'll go for this sort of encirclement like they did in Lysychansk. And I tend to agree with them. And they're planning this withdrawal, especially for the most combat-ready troops. They want to make sure that they leave as fast as possible, and then like there are no more reservists anyway. So yeah, that's basically it for Seversk. The one other thing about Donbass is that in Bakhmut, we're having these reports that Russia hit the base of the 14th Infantry Brigade, and that's just standard by now. They're going around hitting these brigades. I'm not too surprised. But another thing is that um, Ukraine, they've been setting up these strong points all along the outskirts, especially on this road around here and here and here. These roads around here. And this is like not an exact location, it's just a general idea of where these strong points are being set up. But around the outskirts of Bakhmut and on the road especially, we do know that these counter battery radars are being built. And this is just a sort of like, well, they acknowledge that the inevitable is going to happen once Veseldolina falls, Zaitseve they fall, and Russia reaches the road, take Opitny. They will have to have some strongholds before Russia penetrates Bakhmut itself, because you don't want all this fighting inside the city itself. You want to bog down Russian troops outside of it, so then they offer a more weakened effort at taking the city. And sure, maybe Ukraine knows that eventually it's gonna fall. They especially know this, but they do want to make sure that Russia spends as many men and expends as much ammo, material, all of that during the battle, just to make them lose forces in the grand picture. That would not be a good thing for Russia, of course. And that's basically Ukraine's strategy right now. But of course, as I said before, this is at the expense of their own men. So now I'm going to go on to some more of a general discussion unrelated to the front lines, because there were some stuff that I want to talk about that have occurred. And I want to start off with NATO is starting to supply Ukraine even more now as this more protracted stage rages on. So, for instance, Ukraine received 6 British Stormer armored vehicles, and the cool thing about them is that they have surface-to-air missiles. And then another thing that has occurred is that the U.S. announced that they'd be sending another $270 million in aid to Ukraine, and the specific equipment that's going to be supplied is medium-range rocket systems. So when I read this, the first thing I thought is, oh, so they're not sending long-range rocket systems. And I wonder why. Maybe it's because Russia has warned against that. They said that they would be unleashing the entire wrath of their military in response to that. So that's probably why they're not sending the long-range supplies, because then you would see Ukraine be able to target all of the parts of Russia. Well, not here, not around here, but you could see attacks on Crimea, Kursk, Belgorod, all these areas. But the other thing that they want to send is drones, and drones have been a major of major importance to Ukraine in terms of recon, and then like, attacking Russian forces, especially tanks and artillery, stuff like that. So you're gonna see Ukraine replenished once again in time for the battles in Soledar and Seversk. But on the flip side, you have Germany not sending weapons to Ukraine. They're basically delaying this multi-billion um, dollar package, and they call it purely defensive because it's basically consists of these Iris TSLM air-to-air missiles, which would be very good for the Ukrainian Air Force. And it would be very good for their air defense systems against Russian strikes on very big cities. But no, Germany is delaying this for as long as possible, and even Poland called them out for this. Olaf Scholz, he's doing his best. He's walking on thin ice right now, between the NATO countries trying to appease Ukraine and getting gas from Russia, which is now up and running again, as I talked about yesterday. So you're seeing this big split between the Americans and the Germans, and now you might see Germany and other NATO countries become more emboldened by the fact that Russia is now starting to sort of give in. You can say, some would say that it's not really giving in. It's just it's not at their expense. They're just trying to do this for humanitarian reasons. Who knows? But either way, we might see with the Green Deal that I'm going to talk about, and with Nord Stream opening up again, that NATO will start to more brazenly support Ukraine because they see a lack of consequences for their actions. Now, last thing about Russia before we get to the Green Deal, the Institute for the Study of War, they say that Russia has used up 55% to 60% of their high precision weapon reserves. And this is a big deal because, let's say this is correct, they're going to eventually run out of weapon reserves if in the first few months of fighting they've already wasted this much. Now, I don't know how accurate this is because ISW, they are very notorious for having a pro-Ukraine slant while posturing as neutral. But Russia has used an insanely high amount of these Iskanders and stuff like that. Who knows for how long they're going to continue using it? Only time will tell, but I am sort of skeptical of this claim, and I do think that Russia, they will be able to produce more of these in the future. So I really don't think it's a worry that Russia has, and I don't think that Ukraine really has to worry about equipment as much either because of the shipments that I've talked about with from all these NATO countries. Now let's go on to the grain deal that was just agreed upon by Ukraine, Russia, the UN, and Turkey. So basically, what happened was a lot of the issues with fertilizers and grain, they were caused by the war, and you really didn't see a lot of shipments as a result. And there are two reasons for this. First of all, of course, you have the navies of both countries operating along the Black Sea. Russia, their positions around the Black Sea, originally they sort of stretched across almost the Ukrainian coast. Like they had ships that were like right on the beaches of Odessa. But now I'd say that since they left Snake Island and all of that, it's more like it looks more like this. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the extent of the Russian navy. Sure, they might have some that press forward sometimes, but they would be exposed to the harpoon missiles. So the other big reason is that Ukraine, they have basically mined all of their ports. The Odessa port was mined extensively, and the Yuzhny port was mined extensively, and the one in Chornomorsk was also mined extensively. So these three ports, the Odessa, Chornomorsk, and Yuzhny ports, they have been mined to a T. So that was because they were the Ukrainians, they were anticipating Russian naval landings in these areas. Of course, that never happened. So now it's sort of superfluous. So that put a big stop to grain exports and fertilizer exports. You saw a huge rise in the prices. That's one of the main reasons for inflation in a lot of these countries across the globe. So there had to be a deal. There was a lot of international pressure from these countries suffering from the inflation to secure a deal to allow for the transit of the supplies. So here are the terms of the deal. I'm going to read them out. So grain and fertilizer and all of those other stuff, they will be allowed to be supplied uh, to and from Ukraine through the Odessa, Chernomorsk, and Yuzhny ports, and they could do that for 120 days. Now, the other thing is the parts of the Black Sea that have mines already that Ukraine planted, they will not be demined. So Ukraine is not demining anything. They don't want to risk any type of Russian uh, landings on these areas. So they're not suckers. They're not going to be uh, demining. So instead, the way that you're going to see these ships reach these ports and get out of them is through safe paths that Ukraine is very confident about. They're going to set them up, and none of the Ukrainian or Russian navies, they're not going to be attacking any of these ships or anything. They're going to let them through freely. Now, whenever there's a dispute or something, the coordination center between Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey will sort of discuss the matter and sort of come to this resolution, and that will be in Istanbul, the coordination center. And a big concern for Russia that is understandable is that they worry that a lot of these weapons will be smuggled through the shipments to Ukraine. So to sort of ease these fears, in the deal, representatives will be allowed to search the ships for any supplies or anything like that, and Russian representatives will also be allowed to do that. And it is expected that full shipment starts in a few weeks. So that's good news. Um, the Minister of Defense for Russia, Sergei Shoigu, he met with the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, and he signed a memorandum basically facilitating the supply of Russian agricultural products and fertilizers to the world markets. And this is pretty funny because you had all these countries sanctioning Russia, telling them, no, you can't supply your agricultural products. We're going to destroy your economy. And it's backfired to such a degree that now the UN is making them ship it out. Before, it was the other way around. The UN was trying to pass these resolutions of sanctions and stuff like that. And now the Secretary General, he's begging Russia, come on, um, give us your products, your fertilizers. So this is good news. It is very good news for the world, and I really do hope that inflation, at least to a certain extent, goes down. See, let gas prices go down. I do expect that to happen, even in the U.S., and it has been happening now for a few weeks, which is good news. That's it for today, and goodbye.